The next logical step for factoring with the distributive property is to move into this thing called factoring by grouping. Grouping is set aside from the distributive property in that you'll automatically have four terms that you're working with. So as we look at example 1, I might have something like 35xy minus 5x minus 56y plus 8. So I see that I have four terms, and as I go to factor this, what I want to look at is grouping the first two and grouping the last two. That's why they call it grouping. So I'm going to put brackets here. I like to use the brackets to show that I'm just splitting the problem into two sets of two. And then as I look at the first set, I'm going to do what the previous lessons were all about. I'm going to see what I can pull out from those two terms. And so as I look at 35xy minus 5x, I recognize that I could pull out a 5x. As I pull out a 5x, I'd be left with 7y minus 1. Now, that 1, as I've been trying to illustrate in the previous examples, is a placeholder. See, 5x times 1 is going to be negative 5x, or in this case, 5x times negative 1 is negative 5x. Now, once I reach this stage, what I want to do is pretty much get the same set of parentheses on this other side. So if I write 7y minus 1 here, I simply have to figure out what would be the value that's in front of that so that when I distribute, I can create the negative 56y plus 8. And so as I think about that, I can say negative 8. Negative 8 times 7 is negative 56y. Negative 8 times negative 1 is positive 8. Now once I get to this part, what I can do is underline what they have in common and let those leading terms come together. As I bring those together, I could write this as 5x minus 8, and I rewrite what they have in common once. Now for some kids this is disturbing because they always wonder what happened to the 7y minus 1. And so let me just throw an idea in here. If I said I had 3 monkeys plus 5 monkeys, would you agree that I could take the coefficients and say 3 plus 5 is 8, so I could bring those together, 3 plus 5, and then the monkey part is just a label, and so it would be 3 plus 5 monkeys. And of course, in this case, I could actually add that to get my 8 monkey. That's the exact same thing that's happening up here. You're pulling this common factor out, this GCF out, and then you're saying, I'm left with a 7y minus 1. At that point, this just becomes a label. The same thing over here, this was just a label. So you had 5x, and you were able to pull out a negative 8 here. We're able to pull those together, and then the 7y minus 1 is nothing more than a label, so it gets rewritten. And you'll hear me say often, put the leading terms together, rewrite what they have in common once. Let's do a second example of this, and then we'll move on from there. On this problem, we'll call this example 2, of course, we have 10ab plus 5b minus 2a minus 1. Let's see what happens there. So I grouped the first two, I grouped the last two. In the first set, I should be able to pull out a 5b. So as I pull 5b out, it leaves me with this thing of 2a plus 1. Again, how I create that is 5 times 2 is 10, a times b is ab. 5b times 1 is 5b. So I'm really looking for this 2a plus 1 to show up from the second set of parentheses. You have to pull something out. So in this case, if I want to get to 2a plus 1, I'm going to have to pull out a negative 1, leaving that 2a plus 1, because that negative would distribute across there. Once I establish the like terms here, where I have the 2a plus 1 and the 2a plus 1 in parentheses, I'll allow the leading terms to come together. I'll call this 5b minus 1. And I'll rewrite what they have in common once. Essentially, it looks like something that needs to be FOILed out. That's going to be a process called factoring by grouping. You have the 4 terms. You'll group the first 2, group the last 2, pull something out, and you're looking to get a common set of parentheses. The leading terms come together. You rewrite what they have in common once. And again, it's the same thing here. Group, pull something out, looking to get a common set of parentheses. Leading terms come together. Rewrite what they have in common once.